Welcome to Down South Football Live Podcast. Hope y'all doing well tonight. This is your boy Renard Williams. Of course, we got in the building Mr. David Gardner, Mr. I Am DJ Double Dose, aka Ben Dennis. Mr. Chauncey Tuff is here, and also our special guest, Mr. John Garcia Jr., the Director of National Football Recruiting for Sports Illustrated, Mr. Analyst for Sports Illustrated All-American. He's here with us tonight again. Just wanted to bring it back in so we can talk a little recruiting. How you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing well. Always good to be on with you guys. And, that's you guys know how I feel about the state of Alabama. So any way we can link up, I'm all for it.
Well, you've had a lot going on, man, since the last time we talked. First thing I want to talk to you about is, y'all had a nice little presence at the Elite 11. How was that? I saw there was a little things going on. It was a little bit different with everything with COVID going on. So how did that kind of work out for you guys?
It was good. When you're building something new, even with a name like SI, you still need to sort of try to found that culture, build a foundation there. And that was really the first event we were able to cover as a team. So we had Brooks Austin from our Georgia site, Matt Ray from our Tennessee site, Zach Goodall from our Florida site. Really different perspectives, but talented guys. So we were able to come together and really sort of launch a full sort of scaled attack on how to cover this event, even with COVID. So we worked around interviews with Facebook Lives. We shot a ton of video and photos from the stands. We did rankings every day with tangible calculations. There wasn't a whole lot of subjectivity. So we really just, wanted that to be sort of step one in planting this flag and showing folks that there's another, team in town, and we're going to do things a little bit differently, a little more old school. Right. And I think that was really a great, few days for us as a company and as a team. And we really have tried to use that as sort of the catalyst for what we had coming up, which was all these evaluations, new rankings, things like that.
And speaking of it, doing something different, I want to talk to you because I've been following, man, the Caleb Superman Williams blog. I think that's something new and innovative that nobody else was really doing. Basically, if you guys don't know, Caleb Williams, who was the number one quarterback prospect in America, was basically writing a weekly blog talking about everything that was going on with his recruitment up to his commitment. And I thought it was very, very interesting just to get his insight and let him put in his own words instead of where normally in recruiting you're writing the words that they say and you're kind of paraphrasing and doing that kind of stuff. How did that come about?
Well, it really started with basketball. Jason Jordan is running our basketball team at SI, and he had done these blogs with players dating back to I think like well before Zion Williamson. So 5-6 years ago when these guys were in high school, he would just have them write, not once a week, but just whenever, to really dig into something from their point of view. And really when we took on this challenge of SI All-American, we really wanted to sort of go old school in how we handled things, professionally with adults. But with the kids, we wanted to be new school, and we wanted to really give them as much of a platform as possible. So the blogs naturally made it over to football. We do commitment videos, a lot of first-person things with the kids themselves, because this platform they have is huge, and then we're sort of on the cusp of these kids just realizing it, like right now. You see it. We've seen it in the NFL, but now you're seeing it in college and even high school. These kids have a huge, tangible platform. I mean, how many followers does Caleb Williams have on Instagram? I don't have that number with me, but it's a lot more than me.
Yeah.
So you want to find a kid who can sort of handle that type of assignment. So naturally, the quarterback position is where we wanted to go, and he's far and away the best one this year. And we knew going into it that he was very sort of athlete conscious and branding conscious. So we said, look, you want to build your brand and build your voice, let's do it on this SI platform that's as big as it gets, and he's actually in the magazine this week, one of the few high school recruits to ever be in the Sports Illustrated magazine with some quotes and some featurey stuff from our Faces in the Crowd team. So he's been all in with it. It's been really great for us. And like you said, it's been really interesting to sit back and just listen instead of directing all of these conversations with recruits, which is something that, I've done for 10 years. So it's really nice to be on the other side of it.
And also, I want to ask you about Superman. As he, I don't know if he gave himself that nickname, but I just know there was a lot of people knew him by. Caleb Williams, 6'2", 210 pounds, out of Washington D.C. Your number one overall prospect in your rankings, number one quarterback. What makes him different from most of the quarterbacks in this class, or compared to quarterbacks you've seen over the past couple of years? Like, who does he kind of favor to?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think when I first started watching him, I saw a lot of Jalen Hurts. I saw this mature kid who was really comfortable under pressure, whether that meant sitting in the pocket and taking heat and still firing the football, or taking off with it and being kind of the alpha. We don't see a lot of quarterbacks who are an alpha when they do tuck and run, and Caleb has that. But in the last year since then, really looking into his game, the arm talent is off the charts. I had a coach tell me that, and this is a guy with NFL and college experience. He said, look, today he is a step ahead of Jalen Hurts physically, which is crazy because Jalen is known as this physical quarterback.
Right.
But I think Caleb's arm talent, people get lost in the 4.5 and all of his running traits. His arm talent is the best in the country on top of it. So he's the best running quarterback and the best throwing quarterback in terms of raw potential in this class. And with the pressure and all that's put onto the quarterbacks nowadays, for a kid to be mature on top of that and really handle himself a certain type of way, I thought it was really a no-brainer that we would start our rankings with him, because he's the guy you build a whole program around. And there's just not a lot of guys at this age that we feel comfortable saying that about. But with Caleb, again, mentally, physically, and even where he has to improve, which is, consistency, completion percentage, things like that, he knows about it, and he's really put in the work this offseason. And I feel great about him as the number one guy, because he's, like you said, he's different, and that's what makes him different.
Okay. So were you surprised by his commitment to Oklahoma, or was that kind of more what you was expecting?
There was a lot of interesting build up to that. First of all, Oklahoma had a kid committed, right? Brock Vandagriff, who was a Georgia kid. It was a huge shock when he committed to Oklahoma, because everybody thought in Kirby's backyard, he's like, I think he's 15 minutes from campus, that this was a no-brainer. UGA kid picks Oklahoma last year, and then the whole 2021 quarterback board is upside down. But Caleb plays it patient. Again, this comes back to his maturity. And he didn't want to just say, oh, well, Brock's going there, so I need to look at LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, all these other schools. He was always going to do it, leading up to his senior year, so July, August of this year. So then Brock goes and flips to Georgia, I think in January. And really from then, Lincoln Riley just stacked all his chips in on Caleb Williams. And I just think, when you talk about a kid who's that confident and you look at what Oklahoma's done at that position, it's just hard to say no to that.
Right.
I mean, every single guy he's had as a starter since he took over as coach was a second-round pick at the worst. It's like, when I first started covering recruiting, it was about kids wanting to win on Saturdays, right? They wanted, I want to win a ring at Bama or LSU or whatever. Now they're just talking about, I want to play 3 years and go to the league. So that resume is just really hard for anybody to touch, even though some of the schools that were in on him were heavy hitters. Like I said, Clemson, Alabama, LSU was right there for a long time. And then, so Oklahoma felt like the clear choice when we started the blog. And that was actually the last visit he took. So I was like, okay, we're going to do a commitment story for Oklahoma at some point. But then, COVID hits, social unrest pops, and it's still popping, unfortunately. And now all of a sudden, Caleb and his dad and everybody's like, well, hold on now. We're from DC, a very progressive, diverse, area. Caleb is used to a certain thing, and Norman, Oklahoma is not that. So there was a brief time, where Maryland, right down the road, was really looking like the pick for a brief time. And his dad admitted it. He said, look, man, I'm from here. I'm from DC. I know people at Maryland. It was a comfort thing, and it was so appropriate for what was going on, because the schools where the areas where things are the worst when it comes to, racial inequality and things like that are the, most passionate college football
Fan
markets.
base.
So
Hmm.
it was such a there's such irony in that, but it was such a juxtaposition for Caleb and his family um, during this, and it was COVID on top of that. So you had so much time to really dig into that. So it got more dramatic than people realize, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I just think when it came to, again, a mature kid making a business decision, it's just so hard for any quarterback to look past what Lincoln Riley and company have done, and he thinks he can go there next year and start no matter what happens with Spencer Rattler this year, and that just tells you the kind of kid he is, and why we feel good about him as the number one guy, because you want that guy who has that mentality. We saw that with Justin Fields. We saw that with Trevor Lawrence. We
Yep.
saw that
Hmm.
with Sam Howell at North Carolina. The kid who wants the ball today. Tua had it. Jalen had it. Those things are really important, and Caleb definitely has it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
He definitely has that. I got a couple more things before I let the fellas really go on in.
Yeah.
Talking about team, we're getting to a couple teams right now. With Alabama, man, I thought it was laughable back when COVID hit that everybody was preaching the death of Nick Saban. Like, oh, they're on number 58. I'm like, did y'all really think that after he flipped his whole staff to get recruiters on his staff again, do you really think he was gonna stay down? But the way that not so much you didn't know they were gonna come up with Alabama because of the name and who they are and what they do, but the fact that they went to Texas and kind of went wild with the Brockmeyer twins and everything else. Like I think people are really shocked and looking at what they've done. So to me, it's just a typical Alabama class. But it's been wild how they've come on in the last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, and they did it like you said, not only in Texas, but you're going into true enemy territory and pulling out the best kids
Right.
Hmm.
everywhere but Alabama, which is ironic. You expect Alabama to do it in Alabama, maybe in Georgia and Florida, because we've seen it a lot every cycle. But you go into Texas and grab the Brockermeyer twins, whose whole family went to Texas.
Yep.
You flip
Whole
you
Yes.
you
family.
yeah, the whole family. You flip Jalen Milroe, the quarterback who was committed to Texas,
Mhm.
and then you go outside of that state. You go to Michigan and get the number one player in Michigan in Damon Payne,
Yep.
right in Michigan's backyard. You go to
Mhm.
Ohio and flip an Ohio State defensive back commitment in Devontae Smith, who's always going
Right.
to be the other Devontae Smith at Alabama.
Right.
Um, you're going into other states where this thing is, X team's territory without a doubt. I mean, who goes into Ohio for a kid Ohio State wants? Not even Bama. It recently has done something like that. So to do all of that is impressive. To do it with COVID and no visits is crazy. And I think, like you said, just when everyone started to panic, Nick said, "Okay, watch me work." And those assistants went to work, and every single kid who picked Alabama said pretty much the same thing. They were the most consistent. Bama tried the hardest. It sounds so
Mhm.
simple, but it's like at the end of the day, that love that kids want from these schools doesn't stop, no matter if you're taking visits or not. So yeah, it wasn't in person, and it was FaceTime, and it was texting, and it was Zoom and Google
Mhm.
Hangouts or whatever. But
Virtual
they
visits.
right, they still put in the effort, and when a blue blood is putting in the effort like that, it's really an example for everybody. And I think Bama's COVID recruiting strategy is going to be a great book for somebody to write one day.
Yep.
Also on that note, I mean, we are in the state of Alabama, and you are on with two Auburn fans, so I definitely got to go with the Auburn Tigers first and see. I was really really happy, and I think Tuck was too, with the commitment of them going into Texas, also where they've made their presence known over the past two recruiting cycles, especially. Thank you, Chad Morris,
Yep.
uh, for making your presence known there with Demetrius Davis, the
Mhm.
quarterback from I think it's North Shore, I think it's high school
Yep.
Yep.
out there. I mean, I'm really impressed with the kid. I can see why some people peg him as an athlete, some inconsistency with his arm and stuff like that. But him and with Malcolm Johnson not only committing but trying to reclassify now being on campus. What's your impressions of their class so far?
Well, their whole mantra, Tuck, is Auburn fast is what is their thing. right? So I think they got the fastest quarterback in the country and one of the fastest receivers in the country with that duo. But not only the state of Texas, which again, there's blood in the water if y'all can't tell.
It's like that gate open.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. I was talking about this today. When A&M came into the SEC, people thought, oh, this is going to be so great for A&M because now they can recruit their state and say, oh, we're in the SEC. Well, no, it's been great for Bama, Auburn, LSU has dominated that state. Georgia's gone over there. Florida's gone over there. The whole SEC has dipped into Texas, while Texas has sort of been treading water. So yeah, that blood in the water is legitimate. But with Auburn, that machine works best when the quarterback is a true dual threat. Even the Nick Marshall era, when Auburn was rolling, it went to the national title, right? That thing was full speed ahead with, let's be honest, the talent on that roster wasn't great, but the trigger man was a true threat on first, second, third down with his arm and his legs. And Demetrius Davis is such a great fit. Maybe my favorite quarterback fit beyond Caleb Williams is Demetrius Davis at Auburn. That power spread has to involve a quarterback who could truly stress the edge and make that edge defender hesitate for one more millisecond to where you could win the edge and break contain. So when Auburn has that guy, they can be special. And I think that's, in this class, that was the best fit from the jump. And I know they had a quarterback committed, Aaron McLaughlin, when Chad Morris took over. But that didn't last long for a reason.
No. So that wasn't Chad type of quarterback.
Correct. And the whole thing about Davis, as an athlete, look, he was at the Elite 11, and look, he wasn't consistent. He wasn't, but he could get into a rhythm. He's like one of these 3-point shooters, like J.R. Smith. Like, he's gonna miss a few, but if he hits a few, he can get rolling here and change the complexion of the game. So I think Auburn's in a nice position to where they can bring him along, because we all know Bo Nix is the guy for the foreseeable future. So he's going to have time to figure it out. And he's figured it out on Friday nights. I mean, they won the last 2 state championships. And if they play and everything's, kosher out there in Texas, North Shore is going to be the favorite to win a third. So I don't care who you are. If you're a quarterback who's won at the highest classification in Texas 3 years running, I think you can play quarterback in the SEC. So I think Davis is safe at that position. But I understand the knock on wanting a little bit more from his arm, but I think he's going to have time to get there.
Yeah, I'm in love with the kid. I think me and Tuck are both in love with the kid personally. But moving away from Auburn a little bit, I got two more Florida State fans on this call, and I'm not finna get they're not finna jump on me because we didn't talk about Florida State.
Well, Bean was about to erupt when you talked about Sam Howell. I was just going to.
Oh, my bad.
That's so funny. I talked that kid up, and when he flipped on us, I just was like, "Wow."
Okay, sir. Okay. Let's bring it back. So John, with the new era with Mike Norvell down in Florida State, I know he's laying groundwork and doing kind of good things like that. What is your impressions of more of right now going on in Florida State and what the future holds for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough for any first-year coach right now. You had no spring. You don't really know your roster from physically. There's only so much tape you can watch with these guys from last year running a completely different system. It's really hard to even know who you are as a roster, even today. So I certainly understand for not only them, for every first-year coaching staff, how rough this year has been. But we know they have talent. They've got a capable quarterback, and Mike Norvell's done a lot with average quarterbacks. Let's be honest. Right. He hasn't really hit on one who's an NFL star or anything like that, but he's had a lot of great Saturday guys, and I think he can do that with James Blackman. There's no doubt Sam Howell would have fit a little bit better, but it is what it is at that point. Alabama experienced the same thing. A state of North Carolina guy flipping to the home state school with Drake May in this cycle. That could have similar ramifications. But I do think FSU has taken a hit perceptionally just in the last year. I mean, whenever you change coaches twice in 3 years, it's just tough. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter how much of a blue blood, how great of a state, of high school talent you're in. Blood's been in the water in the state of Florida for 10 years. Since Tebow and those guys were done at Florida, Blood has been in the water in this state, in my home state, in terms of other schools coming in and getting great talent. Yeah. I mean, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State has dominated Florida. It's just hard. So those transitions don't make anything easier. But for FSU, it's just about maintaining, to me.
Right.
I thought they showed some signs last year. They have a lot of talent coming back. Surprisingly, they had a lot of guys who could have left, who decided, you know what, like, we're going to come back and try to lead this thing when you think of Marvin Wilson and some of those other guys. So I do think that they have a chance to make some noise this year. But learning a system like Norvell's is going to be really tough without that spring ball period. So I haven't looked at their schedule lately, but hopefully they got some easier ACC games before they hit the Clemson, Miami, gauntlet that they hit, in the middle of the year every year, because that thing needs to have a chance to breathe before you run into those two defensive lines. Those might be two of the top 5 defensive lines in the country. So, and that was a big problem for FSU last year. So in recruiting, I think they have to counter that. Go heavy O-line, go JUCO. A lot of kids from these other conferences are in the portal. Go attack that thing. I think there's got to be, he's got to be a better roster manager than coach in this first year, to me. And then I think his system can get implemented, because we do know that system is really strong and can score on anybody. He just needs to have time to get his guys in and implement it before it's too late. But nowadays, you don't get a whole lot of time.
Right. No. I will let one of the guys go ahead and ask a question before I say anything else. So, Dave, Tucker, Ben, y'all got anything?
Yeah, well, John, we had. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I got something. I want to go back to the point you were making about two things. Texas, Alabama going to Texas and being able to get some big time guys, and the fact that Texas are losing out on these kids. First part of the question is, when I looked at Bama's 2021 recruiting commitment list, I think they had 247 have them with 19 right now. But out of the 19, I think it's about 3 or 4 from the state. Do you think that not really having those commitments in state, do you think that will have some long-term ramifications on the program once a coaching change happens?
Are you saying for Alabama?
For Alabama.
Yeah.
Post Saban era.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a question for every year. Right. But look, Saban is going to recruit nationally, period. It don't matter how good the state is. And we released our SI All-American candidates, 1,000 public evaluations, and the state of Alabama had the 6th most kids on that list. So there's a ton of FBS and Power 5 talent in the state, but you don't win a national title how you used to. The technology and everything has allowed all these kids from across the country and even internationally know about your school. It's why you've seen the decline of programs who refuse to adjust. Tennessee, Nebraska, some of these programs of yesteryear didn't necessarily adjust. But to win a national title today, you have to recruit coast to coast. So, Ohio State, with great talent in their state, is heavy in Texas, heavy in California, heavy in Florida. LSU this past year won it with a quarterback from Ohio and transfers from outside of the SEC, and linemen from well outside of the SEC footprint in the Northeast, in Texas, with their best lineman was from Texas. So no program, even the Florida State, Miamis of the world, can just recruit hometown or home state and expect to win a national title. Because in this playoff era, it hasn't happened. Every single team that's won has had major outside of the region, footprints all over the national title team. So I do think that, could it hurt for 1 or 2 kids if all things are even between Alabama and Auburn, and they say, you know what, Auburn prioritizes the state of Alabama a little bit more. Could they win some victories because of that? Yeah, for sure. But will it be enough to truly sway the perception in the state that it is a Bama state first? I'm not sure, because they're going to continue to recruit nationally. And I think whoever follows Saban needs to follow that, because like I said, you can't win a national title, at least not yet, without a truly national roster. I mean, even Florida State, to bring Ben back in, Jameis Winston was the trigger man, a Birmingham kid, so you just can't do it all at home like you could basically before the internet, before YouTube, before kids can be in Hawaii watching, how Alabama operates and say, dang, if I get that offer, man, that's a visit I want to take, so I just don't think you can recruit at home or take a kid from the home state just because of that. He has to be good enough in your eyes 100% through and through, regardless of where he's from.
Gotcha. I guess the other part of the question is that I want to touch on Texas for a second, because it doesn't really get much bigger than University of Texas when you talk about college football. What is it? Why is it that they just can't seem to turn that corner? Because why is it that they're losing so many kids? I mean, what are the kids? What's the feedback maybe the kids are getting from the kids? Is it that they want to go to someone that's kind of a ready-made program, ready to win right now, or ready to, like you touched on, you mentioned the kids want to do 3 and done, get into the league. I still feel like you can do 3 and done at Texas, but it's something there that's, stopping Texas from being the Texas that we remember.
Yeah, you're right on it, David. It's the NFL. Texas, I think, had 5 or less players drafted every year, and I don't know how long it's been, but it's been several years in a row. And then you look on Saturdays, Big 12 is Oklahoma's conference, and it has been for a very long time. And then you think of it's for you and me. It's like we know what Texas is when Texas can start rolling. That thing is special. I mean, that Vince Young team, the Rose Bowl, none of us will ever forget that. But this group of kids, they were what, 2 years old when that happened? It's I used to get asked a lot, hey, why is Miami not back? It's because these kids have never heard of Michael Irvin and Ray Lewis and these guys. They didn't watch it like we watched it, So you and I can know what that nostalgia is like and say, man, like when Miami's rolling and that's the U swag is rolling, it's different, and we know that's true about Texas, but these kids really don't. And Texas, even when it wasn't winning national titles or competing for them, they were still 9-10 wins a year and always had that NFL talent at certain positions, right? They always had running backs in the league, always had quarterbacks in the league, big receivers.
Right.
They were always sending guys to the league. So the combination of not owning your own conference, not owning your own state in recruiting, and really these kids not understanding your peak, how good it can be, your ceiling at that school is really hard to deal with when Alabama and LSU and Ohio State and USC and some of these other schools are living in your state. It's just a different time for Texas, and they got to do it on the field first. I think they're not one of these programs that can just put more cash into it and hope that works. They got to do it on Saturdays. They got to beat Oklahoma, just like Michigan. They got to beat Ohio State. They have to get over that hump. Florida has to beat Georgia. They got to get over that hump if they're going to get back to wherever they're supposed to be. And up until last year, that's what we said about LSU. They got to beat Bama and get to the SEC title game. They finally did, and now look, they're going to be recruiting downhill with a push for the next few years just because of that. So you got to get over that hump to really reap the rewards, no matter how many resources you have.
And speaking of LSU, John, we had a question in the chat. Tony wanted to know, what are your thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier, LSU's quarterback commit?
Yeah, Garrett was another guy who did blogs with us, so really, really got to know him really well leading up to his commitment. Son of Doug Nussmeier, who, people in this state know pretty well, former Bama OC back in the A.J. McCarron days. Yeah, so had some success at Bama, probably some frustrations too, but a lot of success nonetheless. Garrett has a lot of that coach's kid in him, but he's also got this like extra combination of, I don't know if it's chip on his shoulder or something. There's something about him, this extra factor where he's a little bit wild. He's a little bit of a gunslinger. It's like coach's son for 3 quarters and then bam, something hits. And he just has this playmaking ability that we see great quarterbacks have. He's not going to blow you away physically, 6'2", 190 or so, really accurate throws with great timing, like you would expect from a coach's son. But man, he's kind of at his best when things are at their worst. And you like that about quarterbacks. That's what makes, your Russell Wilsons, your Deshaun Watsons, guys who can really make the best of a bad situation. So I do like that about Garrett. He's got some gunslinger in him, but he's also super sharp, like you would expect a coach's son to be. So when it comes to understanding concepts, things like that, he'll be right on it. I mean, his quarantine coach was Doug Nussmeier, quarterback's coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That's every day.
Right.
Don't get no better than that.
Right. So I think he's got a lot of advantages. That they had a whole field to throw on every day because of how blessed his dad is, from a financial and job security standpoint. So I think he's going to really be the kind of quarterback LSU needs. You don't have to be the world on my shoulders kind of quarterback to win a title there. I mean, we just saw it. Joe Burrow became that, but I don't think he had to be that to win some of those games. He just took it to another level and was as hot as we've ever seen a quarterback. But a lot of those wins were very, very one-sided. He didn't have to be playing outside of his mind for LSU to roll in most of those games. But you want that confident, I can figure it out guy in certain situations. So for LSU to beat Bama, to win in Atlanta and to win in the playoff. So I think he's got a good balance of those traits.
Okay. I know on other sites, I know y'all just starting good, like with Rivals and ESPN and those other guys. There's the Auburn spear. They always think about the Bama bump. Once a player commits to Alabama, they get that from that 3-star. Let's nudge them up a little bit. And from Auburn perspective, if they commit to an Auburn team, they get dropped down. So out of the whole scheme of things, what is your, or how does SI, how do they, I guess you want to say rank players from, being their 3-star, 4-star, 5-star? Like, how do you drop down if you haven't even played a game yet? It just baffles me. Like, how does that happen?
Look, I would be lying if Company X that I've worked for in the past didn't consider where a kid was going. I would be lying to you if I told you that. But I can tell you, confidently at SI, it's the recruiting department is my baby. This is my deal. This is why I came. So we probably had, 50 phone calls and conferences about this SI 99. And how many times a school came up have to be less than 5. It's just not a part of what we do today. We don't do stars. We just do rankings. We just want give me the best. I don't care about the stars or any of that stuff. Just give me the best. And we've got several Auburn commitments in this SI 99. That should never matter where the kid goes. I mean, there's a D3. I live in Tampa. There's a D3 guy starting on the O-line blocking for Tom Brady. So. Yeah. Look, I could care less. I played small school ball. I love HBCU ball. I want those kids to be the best. I would love for a Grambling commit to be our number 1 player in the country. I would live for that. So I'm not going to be the guy who values where the kid is going. Now, if we're doing a feature on best fits, I'm going to put Demetrius Davis on there because now you're talking about projecting through the next level. But we project to the next level. Exactly. The scheme is not going to make or break a ranking, even 1 versus 1. We're not going to say, well, Caleb Williams is going to Oklahoma and Garrett Nussmeier is going to LSU. Oklahoma's been better at quarterback, so let's give Caleb the nod. That's never ever going to come up. We really try to keep it simple. I think the scouting business has gone upside down in the last 5 or 6 years because we're so overexposed to these kids. We see them at practice. We see them in class. We see them out of class. We see them on Friday nights. We see them at camps. We see them at combines. We see them playing other sports. We have so much information. We see them on social media 24/7, Facebook, all that. So we have so much data that it's like overwhelming at times, and we could become pointed to that. And that's something that this year has really forced us to go the other way. this year has forced us to say, hey, let's get back to basics. It's about that Friday night tape. Yeah, if you have new information, everything is still a data point that still matters, but it doesn't matter near as much as that Friday night tape, regardless of where the kid's going. You know, we talk about the competition the kid plays a whole lot at the high school level, but where he's going at the next level really doesn't come up. So I can't confirm or deny the Bama bump existing elsewhere, but there is no such bump at SI, at least not yet. Maybe when I'm gone, they can play politics a little bit more. But as long as I'm here, we will not do stars, and we will not value where a kid is going, because it's all so subjective. You know, those schools. This is the year where everyone's going to miss, right? We haven't seen these kids in a year, and some of these kids aren't playing this fall, right?
Yeah, right.
17 states have said no to high school football. So we're not even going to see Caleb Williams play as a senior. We're not going to see all the kids in Philly, North Carolina, you know, Drake May, guys like that, California. We're not going to see Corey Foreman play unless he moves as a senior. So it's truly a year where you have to. That junior tape is truly everything for this cycle, and I think that's a good precedent for us to fall back on, even when we do have a normal offseason.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up that part of the you grade the kids basically off of their level of competition. Because don't get me wrong, it would have been, let's say, I think Star Jackson when he was in that small school in Mississippi. I was like, man, he's not playing nobody. So I think that when he went to Alabama, I thought he was gonna probably be overwhelmed, and that's what happened. But Derrick Henry, he was just a man among boys down there, but he was running over everybody. I think he could have run over everybody anyway. So it really doesn't matter. But that you brought that up, that again, the level of competition. I try to tell these guys sometimes because they think I'm just hating on people.
You are.
we're not even finna go about your above
They
Virginia.
tell me, I'm like, look, I almost see who these guys unplayed, and some of these high school cats, like I'm like, they ain't playing nobody. So I just want to see, basically who their level of competition is. I'm glad y'all put that into the factors. That's y'all SI 99.
Well, John, let me respond to that. My point has always been, sometimes the kid's gonna play in a lower competition, or you, like you said, it's gonna be a man amongst boys. But I can't hold that against what my eyes see. That's my thing. Because like with Tuck doesn't like Caleb Williams because he's from Washington D.C.
Which
so
is
no.
I was gonna say, have you seen how they play?
That's a Mason Dixon line. I told you.
Here we go.
I said that is right there on that Virginia line. So anything
above Virginia.
John, can you help me please with this guy that wants to kill about 30-40% of the United States, saying they can't play football
above Virginia.
I'm so tired of hearing it.
Look, for a lot of places, that's kind of true, but not DC, man.
I'm not right.
DC can ball. They can ball. That Catholic league up there, it's Gonzaga, St. John's College.
Mm-hmm.
They play big boy ball up there, and even up to Baltimore. There's really great football in that area. Good counsel. I mean, there's a ton of programs that have produced a bunch of NFL guys. So I would never. I think it's a good thing that he played in that league because it was rough from the start, and he started as a freshman. So I think that's actually something we valued with Caleb Williams. Now there are other quarterbacks who don't have that. There's a kid from California, Southern California, Tyler Buckner, who's headed to Notre Dame, ain't played nobody his whole high school career, and then he goes to the Elite 11 and he's throwing from his hip. He's throwing from down here, and we're saying, okay, now hold on. So that forced us to sort of recalculate. He was still an SI 99 guy and has a ton of talent, but you have to recalculate based on what you see on Friday nights and who you see it against. I think if you're playing against nobody, you should be dominant. It should be Derrick Henry. It should be Najee Harris in high school. Didn't play against great competition, but he was throwing human beings to the side as he moved forward. You should be making plays like that if you don't play anybody as well. So I do think it works both ways. If you want to say they're not playing against anybody, then they need to be a record-breaking type of talent otherwise, which is I think why some of these schools have popped up and they've targeted guys like that. I think of like an IMG Academy. They got a lot of country boys from the middle of nowhere to come down, and they could still play. Dylan Moses did not suffer by moving to IMG. Bo Scarborough. I mean, these guys are still creating that competitive atmosphere, and I think you're starting to see more schools like that pop up. I know there's St. Francis in Baltimore. There's a bunch of them popping up, and I think this year is going to be another sort of benchmark for schools like that, because I think a school that's independent, that's willing to spend money and house kids and give them a bit of a college experience, those schools are going to start to get the benefit of the doubt, because I guarantee you every school in the country, every college in the country will take an IMG kid right now.
So since you bring up IMG right quick, what do you think about IMG, like the whole dynamic?
At first I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't get it. I thought, okay, so Shea Patterson is a great, Californian quarterback. Why does he need to go to IMG? He's already going to be a highly rated kid, and he was already great. We had already seen him at all the camps and all that stuff. But then you go to IMG, and then you get it. It's college. It's a college. I mean, and I think for that country boy who maybe doesn't play great competition, it makes sense. But it also makes sense for those dominant players who just want more. Does a Caleb Williams need to play another year of high school ball to stay at number one? Probably not. So should he go to an IMG? Maybe if that was in his plans, that would be something we actually kind of liked, because now you're facing that competition every day, and it truly is 24 hours a day there. They got 10:30 curfew every night. Even after a home win, you got to get back to your dorm. So it really does create a college atmosphere, and I think there's a couple kids who are like poster childs for what IMG can be. Evan Neal was a 400-pound freshman who moves to IMG and says, "Look, man, I just need to fix all of this that I can be good at the next level." Because he was great as a freshman in Okeechobee, Florida, but man, he got to IMG with the guys who are now at Alabama. Ironically enough, those strength and conditioning coordinators, and they really reshaped his whole body. And you're getting coaching from NFL linemen, or NFL players, I should say, former NFL players, and the facilities are off the charts. There's nutrition. I mean, there's really. If you go to IMG and you don't make it, it really feels like it's on you at that point. But again, there's only so many scholarships, and then some kids are paying a ton of money to go there, and they're never going to make it. So I get why there's such a disdain for IMG, but I do think that it's benefited a lot of kids, and I think that it's going to create other schools and other business-minded folks to say, hey, why don't we do that in Texas or California or another area like Florida where there's a lot of talent already. So let's pull some of them together, and then we can start pulling from a national perspective. I think all of the sort of traditional elements of football are going to start to leave us. And maybe COVID and this whole year is the catalyst for all of that. But I think people are thinking bigger than ever. And these kids have a platform that's bigger than ever. So who's to say the SEC doesn't say, screw the NCAA one day, right? Would that surprise anybody if some of these power conferences decided to make their own super conference? No, probably it's an expectation at some point. So if it happens at the collegiate level, you best believe that it's going to happen at the high school level. We're seeing it right now in South Florida, in the Miami area. These schools and districts are literally fighting the statewide athletic association because they can't agree on when to play, how to play, and all of those things. So there's already talk of that happening in the state of Florida. So I think that this is going to be another layer of precedence for that happening everywhere. So I think the IMGs of the world have that much better chance of survival if and when those things happen.
I got a question, John. Yeah. I was trying to find a tweet that I was read earlier. It kind of touched on about because my worry was with COVID, with Division I schools only get 85 scholarship athletes that they can have from the team. Well, now with the fall sports, the schools that are that are going to play. I was worried. I was like, well, what is going to look like if it gets canceled and the NCAA gives them the eligibility back? Are they going to be able to keep their scholarships? And if they are going to be able to keep their scholarships, then if you have 10 players that decide to stay, then now it's not 25 for that year, maybe down to 15. What would that look like? But then I found a tweet that said that the NCAA were going to be able to, or the schools were going to honor those new scholarship kids coming in as well. Now, my question really is that what will recruiting look like for the schools that are going to play in the spring or are supposed to play in the spring? How do you think? Because in my mindset, I'm like, man, we may see more walk-ons than ever. But how you think that's going to look as far as being able to sign a class, but you're playing in the spring?
Yeah, it's the whole spring college season to me has felt crazy from the beginning. How could you do that, right? How could you manipulate the scholarship numbers, have a season, and bring in a whole other class all at the same time? I don't know how that's going to work. Now, the NCAA has made some decisions. Basically this year, from an eligibility standpoint, doesn't count for anyone. So, so technically, Najee Harris can come back, even though he's a senior. He can come back next year and play in 2021. I mean, it's not going to happen, but he could. So I think that basically froze everybody's eligibility. So you have to expect them to allow for more scholarships. How many more? And then does everybody get the same amount? All of those questions, they haven't even touched. And I think that's why, because it's going to be really hard logistically to navigate all of this. So I think there's, from the NCAA, I think they're sort of rooting for one or the other. Either we're playing this fall or we're playing in the spring. I think the NCAA's nightmare scenario is kind of how it looks right now, where the Big 12, SEC, and ACC are going to play now, and the rest of them are going to play in the spring, because now you're dealing with it over. It's like 2 years at once, 2 seasons at once. So that's why from the beginning I was in the camp of either we play in the fall or we don't play at all. Because now, again, when you play in the spring, not only does it affect the roster numbers and the incoming recruits, how does that affect the next season, the 2021 season? Never mind the NFL draft and all that logistical nightmare. Mm-hmm. What about the next season? Because the deeper you play into the spring of 2021, now you're talking about, a few months in between a whole nother season, which has never happened. So I think that's just a lot to ask at any level, especially college. So I don't know how it's possible at this point, but I do know the NCAA has been mighty quiet with all of this stuff, and I think it's because it's truly a mess. It's truly fluid right now in terms of how to deal with this. But if there is football in the fall and the spring, I've got to imagine 120 scholarships. Right now it's 85. I mean, it's got to go way up, because you're not penalizing anybody who plays or doesn't play. So even the kids, who opted out but then want to come back on the roster, they're good to go with scholarships there, and their eligibility hasn't been touched. So it's really something we haven't seen before, and I think that's why they've been so quiet about it, because I don't know how it's possible to make the numbers work and frankly to make it fair.
And I don't even know how they're going to do it, because if you got a early enrollee, what do you do with his eligibility? If he plays, are you going to make him sit out in the spring? That and will the colleges that have not had a season, will they lose funding? I mean, you got funding that plays a part in there too. So will they be able to even honor these scholarships? So it's a mess, man.
And like we said, what about the well-being of the kid? I mean, you're playing. You want somebody to play from February to March, take a couple months off, and then in June you're expecting them to start back voluntary workouts, and then play again in August with no rest. That's asking a lot for somebody who's not, getting paid for all of this.
That's a whole different. That's a whole different deal, because these guys feel like essential workers, don't they?
Right. At that point, it's like, hold up, now.
That's a whole other layer. But like I said, this is going to bring so much change to really everything we know about football at every level. So if if there's some true positive change, then I'm good with it. But yeah, imagine if you're Ohio State, you're going to play in the spring with a roster that should be, I mean, maybe the best among those conferences that are going over to the spring, which means you're going to play more games. And then just because that season's in the books doesn't mean that 2021 fall isn't going to be another loaded roster. So you're talking about what, 27, 28 games in a calendar year? I mean, that's insane to think about. Insane.
To put the kids through that, man. That's
18, 19-year-old kids doing that is there's no way. And that's why the spring season has always felt really weird to me. Maybe you make it, you somehow minimize it. Maybe, I don't know. Even then, I'm just not sure if it'll be worth it for some of these players. So I just think you're going to see so much fluidity, opting out, sitting out, voluntary red shirts. I mean, I think it's going to be crazy, and that can create the walk-on scenario that I think you were talking about earlier. Because now all of a sudden you need bodies. I had a friend suggest that in the spring they do like a JV season where it's all freshmen and sophomores, and then in the fall you do your normal full season. So some of those guys will be able to play a few extra games, but not all of them, not the whole roster. So I thought that was kind of a decent idea, but in general, I'm really not feeling a spring season. I just don't see how it works, especially for free.
The only one that I've seen that is, of course, is the SWAC. The SWAC is the only one that I've seen like officially released. I think it's an 8-game schedule. Dave, ain't that right? 8-game schedule, and they've released all that kind of stuff, like when the Magic City Class is going to be and all that kind of stuff. They're the only ones officially that I've seen to say we're going to go ahead with the go ahead. But back to Ben's point of talking about the, taking a couple months off, there is no couple months off. So if they come off that spring season, you give them a couple weeks, and then you right back into your off season workouts. I mean, where's the real break going to come in? It's like we didn't want to play in the fall, but now we want to play in the spring, and we want to double up. You talking about you worried about his health and safety as a player. You're not worried about the health and safety as a player. Let's be real. You're worried about the liability if something happens to them in the fall, because basically you're saying play in the spring, take a couple months off from real competition, and do your workouts, and then come right back in a month or two. So
it's crazy.
It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like it should be. It doesn't sound like it should make sense in that sentence. And then what about mentally, right? What do we normally do, right, as athletes in the fall when the season's on? Minimal classes. Everything is real chill, right? We just want to focus on ball. So in the spring, you got workouts, but you're loading up academically, the spring and the summer. So now, how does that work academically with these programs that are guaranteeing degrees in 3.5 years? That's how they do it. They stagger the classes year round. So there's more academic responsibility when there's less physical responsibility. But now you're saying the whole year of 2021 is a physical and academic responsibility like we've never seen before. I mean, it's just so much to consider with these kids. On top of that, there's no guarantee that all this COVID stuff will be done by then either.
Well, let me ask this question, though, now that you think about it. So, and I'm just kind of thinking outside the box, because if I got a spring season, then now my fall and spring flip-flops. So where my downtime was spring, now my downtime is fall. What if it was a scenario where they played in the spring and they kind of maybe pushed the season back a little bit in the fall? I don't know what that would look like, but maybe because what do we have? If you're playing in your last game is in January, you got roughly 7 months break in there. Right. Yeah. So if my last game is in March, hypothetically, I don't know when they're talking about starting. Well, when does the SWAC start in Williams?
It's an 8-game schedule. I think it starts in like last week in February, going to March.
Late February, first part of March.
Okay, so they're finishing up around April.
Well, I think with Messi Classic, ain't April
17th. April 17th. My sister.
So let's just say hypothetically they finish up in April, and then you start back in, let's just say, October. Well, maybe you might have to do another 8-game season. I mean, you may just have 2 condensed season, and you may be able to get back on track. That's the only way I can conceptually think about it.
So do you do that forever, or do you just try to do that for 1 year?
Yeah.
Well, I think after the fall, you can get back on track, because if you can get them in this year, in 2021, 2022, you should be able to get back on track.
Right.
But I think if you're going to play in the spring, then your fall is going to have to be condensed like your spring is.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
It's definitely a sliding scale there, and maybe something like that can work. But how they're talking about it right now, with the expectation of a full normal 2021 season, it just doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah.
So John, what do you think about the possible national champion having an asterisk this year beside their name, because you had the Pac-12 or the Big Ten involved in any of the any of the college playoff this year? Quote unquote.
Well, have they been involved in the last few anyway?
That's true, but
outside Ohio State.
Outside
Ohio State. Right.
One team.
All 36 of those people tried to come out there and protest and all that. If that would have been Alabama, I'm gonna tell you, it would have been thousands if Alabama would have did stuff like that. But anyway, do you think it would be an asterisk by the name for this season national champion?
No, look. In '99, the Spurs beat the Knicks in the lockout season. Does anybody talk about Tim Duncan getting an asterisk? No. I think a champion's a champion, and when you're talking about the conferences that are left, I mean, it's almost all of the power players that we thought we were going to see. Preseason, who is it? It's Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida.
LSU.
I mean, they're all LSU. They're all still there. It's really Ohio State is the true juggernaut that, to me, really the only team, maybe Oregon a little bit.
Oregon, yeah.
The only team that hey, if they get in, they can win the whole thing. I don't know if that exists with other programs that were on the come up, because we just hadn't seen that team that rose from pretty good to, they're in the playoff. We hadn't seen a lot of that.
Right.
A couple teams had a cup of coffee in the playoff. Notre Dame, Michigan State made it the 1 year, but
Washington.
they got boat raced. Washington, they got destroyed. So it really was kind of the beginning and the end of their playoff ascent. So really, I think Oregon might have been that team, but Ohio State's really the only one from those two conferences that feels like, dang, like they really missed out. It wouldn't surprise anyone if Ohio State won the whole thing this year, or Fields was a Heisman winner, stuff like that. So you understand that, but I don't think there's an asterisk, because there's just too many great teams, great coaches with the expectations really not changing a whole lot.
Right.
And John, I felt like, when I heard the whole asterisk thing, I heard different fan bases and different people arguing. My point was, this would be the year that you would count it the most, because there are no cupcakes. You're playing directly in conference. And when have you ever had 10 SEC conference games? And same thing for ACC. I mean, you've never had that. So if anything else, this would be the year to say, yep, they earned it, because there is no Savannah State. There is no whoever that's on the schedule. Like, let me get warmed up for these first couple of weeks, maybe, or we're going to play a hard beginning game, and then we're going to have, someone else we're going to play. So it's like, you're playing conference from game one. There are no warm-ups. There's no nothing. Like, if you make too many mistakes in that first half, you might not be able to bounce back in the second half. And it's a conference loss. Not only is it a loss, it's a conference loss. So to me, it was like, I understand the optics are like different, but looking at everything in totality, it's like, we've never had this. We've never had it to where, especially since the divisions and everything split up in the SEC, I mean, you've never had to where you get like, I'm getting 10 conference games and you got to bring it every week. There's no, man, I can rest this week. Nope. Because every week someone is going to be trying to bring it in each of the conferences. The only one that might be used to it is probably maybe the Big 12, just because of the way they do their conference scheduling, where they play everybody. But this is a brand new ball game for the SEC, regardless of what you think about a Missouri or anyone else. When you're going through that every week, even with the buys, you have to think that, man, that's still a gauntlet to go to in any of the three conferences that are still playing. So if you get to that national championship game, you earned it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that. It's true. It's a different schedule, and not to mention all the stuff that all of these schools that are still playing have had to go through just to get there. no spring football, unknown rosters, and really not being on top of your guys like you normally are, 12 months out of the year, that too. I mean, it says a lot for the coaches that can survive something like this and have success, which makes us all sort of think that the teams that were already in the best position are going to stay there, but they still have to earn it like everybody else. And like you said, no cupcakes is a game changer. And I think that there's a chance that the whole playoff is teams with at least one loss, which I don't know if that's ever happened off the top of my head. But usually there's an undefeated team or two. I mean, Clemson hasn't lost a pre-college football playoff game in a minute right off the top. So I know usually there's at least one undefeated team in there. So I think that's going to be different too. There's going to be a whole lot of battle tested in whoever the Final Four is going to be this year.
Well, and also too, you could get a sleeper because of sometimes you get like Williams was saying, you get that stretch of schedule depending upon where you might have a 3-game stretch. This other team that you playing may have come off of a cupcake game. Injuries play a part, so you may drop a game or two that you normally would, and then you look up and like, dang.
Yeah, I mean, what if Trevor Lawrence has to quarantine for a week,
right? For 2 weeks, yeah.
And they play North Carolina or Miami, somebody who has a lot of talent, that could be a whole different factor that we've never really seen before. But yeah, you're right. There's a chance that total chaos can happen this year, which again, like to Renard's point, there definitely should be an asterisk because it could be the hardest year to do this that we've ever seen. So, yeah, I really don't see an asterisk either way because to us, champions are champions, and there's enough great teams today to where you're not going to passively think, oh yeah, but Bama didn't play nobody and they won the title. Like, yeah, they played all these teams, and then Clemson and Oklahoma. Right. Like, they played everybody.
Right.
Best thing they did was take USC off the schedule. Yeah, they can't say that this
year. So John, let me ask you this: your thoughts about we do kind of do this quickly, just in case some people tuning in got some questions for you. Your thoughts about the possibility of not completing the season? What's your percentage right now? Because looking from different campuses and keeping up with it, man. Like I tell you right now, being in college football media is probably the biggest blessing and the biggest curse at the same time right now. Because every single day, it's like it's something. And you normally get that news around this time but you're normally talking about camp. I'm talking about injuries and things of that nature. So you put all that together. So what do you think is the possibility of us actually finishing? Because you have football players that are begging on social media like, hey, can y'all not congregate together so we could just try to have some type of a season? And normally it's the other way around, where football players a lot of times are the ones that are like kind of like, whatever, I'm not following the rules. But I'm just looking at a possibility of what's your percentage wise of us finishing the season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what the ACC has started to do, we saw it at UNC, NC State, a couple others. They're basically creating bubbles. They had kids come to school, a bunch of positive tests, and they're like, man, go back home, and the athletes are going to stay. And again, that brings up the whole essential workers, they need to be paid deal, which I think we could all agree on. But they're creating these bubbles, and some of those teams continued practicing. I think Notre Dame and North Carolina stopped for a few days. I think they're back at it though. So they basically stopped, let the kids go back home, and they sent them home. At North Carolina, I was told that thing was quick. It was like, bye, like leave. Yeah. So, and I don't know how that works with charging tuition and all of that. That's a story for another day. But I do think that model could sort of create movement with other schools. I mean, obviously everybody saw what happened at Alabama today with the positive tests, just crazy numbers. So maybe that's something Bama starts to think about with the success that North Carolina and NC State and Notre Dame are having with that kind of plan. All these kids are used to learning online right now. Half of these kids already had online classes before COVID ever was a thing. So it's definitely possible. We had a whole, second semester graduations, all of that in the spring, despite all the shutdowns. And that one wasn't expected. This one would be pretty expected, and kids would be prepared.
So I do think that there's a way to get it done, but every day there's more reason to sort of be worried about it a little bit. So I do think that those bubbles can be a short-term solution, and if it works in the next few weeks, they might just try to ride that out throughout football season and try to come back in January or something like that.
I kind of agree with you on that. I know around some SEC schools and ACC schools, I've heard the coaches basically say they have a bubble without saying they have a bubble. Like,
right.
Our kids are not getting the option to go to class. Our kids are going to be in online, and they're going to be basically isolated to the football facility for the most part. So, I mean, I guess that's where we are. But getting back to recruiting, bringing it back in, what is the biggest misconception that you hear from people when it comes to recruiting? I hear a lot of them that it's a guarantee and that guy's this and this guy's that, and there's so many people that just focus on a star and not really understanding what a star really means. And to me, it's great that recruiting is taking off. Anybody that knows me knows I've been following recruiting for over 20 plus years. So at first I was that person like, why are we getting this 2-3-star guy? Like I want that 5-star guy. But as you look at it, you'll see number one is about development, who's actually starting, and take away what Nick Saban has done, because that's just not fair. But for the most part, you just, what's the biggest misconception about just overall recruiting?
Man, that's a great question. We could go a lot of different avenues with that one. I think the biggest misconception is right at the top. People don't realize how much is put into this. Like I said, I've worked at now 3 of the 5 major networks who do this, and all of them work their tail off for this. It's not just, oh, I saw a minute of highlights and he's a 4-star. That really doesn't happen. There are always extra calls. There are always more questions. Text the local guy in the area, the newspaper writer, talk to his high school coach. There's so much more, I guess, reporting that happens in this business than people realize. Look, sometimes, a freak of nature comes along and you're like, man, that's a dude. Like, that's a guy, but you still have to take a step back and look into it. So I do think that's a big misconception about the game from a coverage standpoint. And, in terms of the evaluation itself, I think there's a big misconception on how well we know these kids. Some kids, Caleb Williams, do I know him very well now? Yeah, we've talked on the phone every Sunday for 26 weeks. So, I know Caleb Williams pretty darn well, but half of these kids I don't. So a lot of, and again, you guys know this, being around it, so much of this is in here with these kids. How much you're willing to be developed, how coachable you are, how disciplined you are without mom and dad waking you up every day. That there's so many intangibles that lead to success or failure. So I think that's another thing is a lot of the benefit of the doubt is given physically, right? Because we can see it. We can see tangibly, hey, Kool-Aid McKinstry is 6 foot with a 6'3" wingspan, and I can watch him do a windmill dunk, and I can watch him jump over a DB for a touchdown. It's tangible. But we don't know, and this is not to single out Kool-Aid,
right?
But we don't know how Kool-Aid is treating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. We don't really know those things. We can try to learn, but it's the same thing like the NFL draft. How many kids get drafted so high and they don't never even look right in the NFL? They never fit. They get in trouble. There's just so much unknown. Even when you try diligently to figure out who these kids are off the field, you never really know. So I think gambling, everything's a gamble when you put a number or a star or whatever on a kid, because there's a lot of elements where you don't really know. Yeah, coach told you he's a hard worker, but what is he going to tell you? The kid sucks.
Right.
Right.
The coach wants
right. He's not going to tell you that.
I mean, some coaches will, but most won't. So, it's really hard because even the people who know the kid for real don't necessarily present that in that same way that they see it. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, good and bad, that comes out of this. And I think a lot of the misses oftentimes are kids that, it becomes a character thing. I mean, Antonio Alfano was the number one player on 24/7, 2019? And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. But we knew we had some phone calls that said, hey, he's transferring schools, things aren't working out, XYZ. But, you watch him play and you're like, yeah, but he can do this, So sometimes we make that mistake even when we do know that there are some signs that things aren't great. And then on the flip side, we get calls saying this kid is an idiot and he's doing all these bad things. And then he goes to college and there's just no red flags ever. And he rolls right into the NFL. So some of the information we get isn't right, frankly. And that does still lead to a lot of these decisions. So I think there's misconceptions on both ends of the recruiting spectrum.
I think it's a big thing with recruiting that I guess me and the guys have talked about. I think Ben is probably the novice of the group with recruiting and understanding it and understand how it really works. I think what it's become is now people have tried to say, oh, we got this and this is going to happen. It doesn't automatically happen that way, and it's not something that just does it. We use examples like Mark Ingram. We use examples like system. We use the example of the fit, the coaching, and you never know what kind of high school they're coming from. Maybe they wasn't developed. Maybe they didn't get the reps in high school. Just because you don't know a kid, it doesn't mean a kid can be. Right. It's not going to be that great prospect. I think it's a lot that goes into it, and I think a lot of fans, I would say 85% of fans will be the ones that have like the actual who playing some on their phone?
Dave,
you playing some on your phone?
Man, Dave. I watched the video Doug just sent me.
Well, you all in our conversation right now.
You just lied.
My bad, man. I was sorry.
You just lied. You know what I mean? There ain't nothing amazing.
We just asking questions, but I explained to the guys when we were talking about, like, I've seen so many people get upset. Oh, he was a 3-star, he was a 2-star, he was a 1-star, and I'm like, or no star. And I'm like, have you watched the tape?
Right?
Can he play? There's so many things that go into it. Like the new age people are all into a star. Mm-hmm. And a star it's like saying that somebody looks at Renard Williams and say, oh, he's a 2-star person. That's their opinion. It's up to you to go out to put the work in and do what you need to do to get it done. Byron Coward, God knows everybody's used that example. Number one player. He got there and there was some issues. The guy was just athletically better and just didn't have that motor that Rodney Gardner wants. And if you don't want to play for Rodney Gardner, trust me, you will not play. So I just think people want to be so absolute. I just think it's a lot that goes into it. Coaching, development, mindset, what the kid is willing to do. And it's just it kind of bothers me sometimes because I see people say, oh, he's not this, he's not this, he's not that. Because look what star he got. I'm like, that's just someone's opinion of you. And as fans, we do look at that, but that's why I was asking about the biggest misconception, because I think that's one of the things that kind of like annoys me a lot. They don't really look at the football player; they'll just look at a star and won't even watch the guy's tape.
Right, and it's for the fans, and that's I think another good one is everything about the recruiting business up until now, and we're really working hard to change this. Is about the fans. It's not about the recruits. It's about the fans. It's a business telling you as a casual fan, hey, you should expect this from this kid because we put this star on him. It is a business. The college football fans are paying the $10 a month, not the kids, not the schools. It's the fans. So yeah, that is a part of the business strategy, and it's worked, right? Like you said, it's come a long way, and it is a I don't know the dollar amount, but it's this is my full-time job, right? So it's come a very, very long way. But that's what I always tell people. Look, that is not for the kid. And the kids get mad and they're like, why am I this? It's not for you. It's actually for the fans. Obviously, today it's impossible to operate without including the kids or anything like that. But really, that system, that traditional system, is for the fans to gauge what somebody thinks of the kid. Like you said, it's all subjective at that point. So could a Bama bump exist? Yeah, it could exist. It's it's smart business, isn't it?
Right.
If Bama's won however many of the last 12 national titles, wouldn't that tell you conventionally you should give them the benefit of the doubt more at the end of the day? Yeah, we're humans, right? So, and again, I'm not personalizing this, but that's part of the business. And I think that's another thing that I try to tell a lot of prospects who get mad. And I say, look, this star somebody gave you is not for you. It's really for the fans of the school you might go to. So it's kind of a crazy system, but it's just social media has blown it up so much that that point isn't always very clear. So that's another reason why we try to lift up the kid as much as we can, and why we don't do stars, and we want it to be about the prospects as much as it's about telling fans, hey, you're getting a pretty good player, in a year or however long it's going to be.
Y'all got anything else before we turn it over to the audience to see if they got any questions real quick? We told John an hour. We didn't held them longer than that. So
we kind of asked their questions in between, so they good.
Well, I didn't ask none. I didn't ask not one of their questions. Might ask.
I did. I did, sir. I did host.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, you asked. I got too many of my other questions that we need to be answered outside of that.
I did. So we good.
Yeah. So anybody else from the audience got anything? So type it in the comments. If not, hey, y'all let me know. David or Tuck or Ben, y'all got anything?
We good, man. We appreciate it, man.
Man, for coming through and everything. Y'all got some questions, man. Y'all just hit him up on Twitter.
Exactly.
Yeah, that too. But John,
hit that SI website.
Yeah, John, if you can promote your website real quick and let everybody know where you can be found at and all your social media stuff, and then
Yeah, I appreciate it. Always good to be on with you guys. Always enjoy the conversation. It's real, that's again, that's just all we're trying to do. Everybody on my staff is a person who is about ball. We have former NFL scouts, college scouts, directors, player personnel. They're guys who coached, played, and just grew up around the game like I did. So that's what we want to promote at SI All-American. It's all free. We do have team channels, and we're certainly growing in that direction. Bama Central is our Alabama channel. They do a great job. Christopher Walsh has been in the game forever. But SI All-American is our recruiting hub, football and basketball. We do great basketball stuff as well. Again, it's all free. There's a community tab on there. Sign up, get a free profile, and comment. Come talk to us. We're extremely available. We want to make everything we do very transparent, from positional rankings, and we got rankings nobody else has. We rank the nickel position, slot receiver, edge defender. We scrapped outside linebackers because they don't really exist anymore. We really try to keep up with the modern college football game, and we project to college. I'm not telling you Caleb Williams is going to be the number one pick in the draft in 4 years. I hope he is for his sake, but that's not going to affect my evaluation. We project for college. We want to tell you who's going to help your college immediately. So we do think we're doing things a little bit differently, and we'd love for you to check us out. SI All-American through all social media. SIAllamerican.com is the website.
But I do have a question. This is from one of my friends back at home. His son Jackson is amazing. He says, my son's invited to the show at IG. I think you meant IMG. Is this a tryout? I don't know.
So yeah, the show is a multi-layered sort of camp event. They've run some really great events. I personally am not involved and haven't covered it, but I know a lot of people who have, and they say a lot of really good things. And I know a lot of kids who participated who said it was really great as well. And I think, Kevin, for your question, I think that's what's going to pop up a lot more. We're talking about college football this whole time. I mean, high school football is such a different story. We have no idea. I feel so much better about college finishing than high school, right? So the high schools don't have the resources the colleges do. So I think that high school season is more fluid than any of them. So I think events like the show and more 7-on-7s are going to pop up, throughout the fall, which we've never seen. But I think that's going to happen this year because of all the states canceling and all the other states still trying to figure it out. So I think any opportunity for exposure is a good one. Obviously, every camp is different in terms of how much it costs and things like that. I'm not a big advocate for spending a lot of money on this stuff because if you're good, there's enough technology to show it. But I do understand the need to show it against other players and to get in front of certain eyes. And I do know a few folks there, like I said, who are good in my book. So I would give them the benefit of the doubt if you're able to do so.
Okay. And he wants to know about what did he say? Players not willing to wait. Here it is. It says players not willing to wait their turn in college. That seems to be a new, not gonna say new, but I'll say more publicized issue that's going on. Do you run into that a lot, or do you hear about that a lot, like from a personal standpoint, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know kids who aren't willing to wait their turn in high school, so they transfer high school.
True.
IMG got a new quarterback, and the guy from last year was like, "I'm out. That kid's pretty good," So it's just the culture. It's the current culture, that exists, and I think as the platform grows for these kids, the movement is going to grow as well. You have more reason to not stay because there's success when you don't stay in a lot of cases. I mean, Joe Burrow was a transfer quarterback. Justin Fields was a transfer quarterback. Baker Mayfield was a transfer quarterback. Kyler Murray was a transfer quarterback. Cam Newton was a transfer. I mean, it goes on and on. There's so many success stories where guys left option A and still figured it out. And now the NCAA is like scared to not give somebody a waiver. So there's basically a free pass on your first transfer. So I think the platform and how big it really is has given kids confidence to say, hey, I can leave and still be good somewhere else. And a lot of them have been, but a lot of them at the same time haven't been. There's a lot of kids in the portal right now freaking out, not knowing if they're going to play at the same level ever again. So it's like anything else. You are what the market says you are. If you want to make that big business decision, you have to suffer the big business consequences because the market can change just like that. Ask Georgia over the last few years, just at quarterback. The market can change in an instant. So I do think that you're going to keep seeing that. We've seen kids in the portal today who are in the conferences that shut down and they want to play for a conference that's playing, right? So It goes back to, what Dave said earlier about the numbers and scholarships and eligibility. How does all of that stuff work? So it's really slippery, but unfortunately, I think the portal and social media combined with the platform these kids now know that they for sure have has changed that whole game. And like that's what I was saying about FSU, roster management is priority one for these coaches before X's and O's and game planning. You got to maintain and sometimes recruit your own roster. So these coaches are under more pressure than ever as well. But I don't think it's going to slow down the fluidity and the portal and all of that. No way.
Okay. We're going to let one more question come in, and then we're going to wrap it up with John so he can get rest because this is a busy time of year for him.
Right.
This is the last question. Roger says, follow up to that question, does that affect the evaluation or does it stay consistent with the initial rating? I'm trying to figure out what he means by that.
Well, I guess the kid transfers schools.
Oh, I guess is what he means.
There you go.
Oh, to some degree, if we know, look, a lot of times we know why the kid transferred, or if he got kicked off the team and said I transferred. So we already know.
You saying something then?
We already know those answers more times than not. So yeah, if we know that it was a bad situation and the kid, made a big mistake or more than one big mistake, that does affect the evaluation. If we're putting our names on something, we want it to be right. And there's a very fine line ethically when you're talking about character and a minor. You know, these kids are mostly minors. So it is a fine line. We don't treat it like the NFL where it's like we hear one bad thing and we take the kid, rip his name off the board and never think about him ever again. We don't want to be that severe. But, yeah, we do take those things into consideration. And there are kids that are SI 99 guys in this class that aren't in it because we know that there have been some tough situations in the last, however long. So, yeah, character plays a part in evaluation, but not as dramatically as the NFL. We do understand that these kids, for the most part, are minors, and I think everyone deserves that benefit of the doubt. Hey, I make a mistake, but, we'll just take a closer look at his next stop and see if that continues. I was told today that a kid who I actually really liked was dismissed from his high school and is going to look for another school. And I talked to the coach. I said, did you tell the college coaches? And he said, yeah, he said, my name's on this kid. I've vouched for this kid until this point, but now he's shown for whatever reasons that it's not been good. And this kid, this was unfortunately this was a drug issue. He said, look, man, once or twice, fine, but it just kept happening. So At some point you do have to draw the line in the sand with your name on the line. So I understand both sides of it, but we do try to give the benefit of the doubt and not, crush a kid for one thing.
Well, that's my final thoughts. David, you got anything, sir?
Nothing at all.
We done held John enough for the night. Ben?
No, I'm good, man. I love the talk, man. Definitely.
Good,
well,
bro.
yeah, I mean, I think we have already proven that we can talk this subject and especially things about recruiting for hours upon end. But we know it's busy season for you, man. Love all the work you're doing over there at SI, man. I love it. Like you said, it's innovative and everything is going great. And you definitely got some followers on us. And if there's anything we can ever do for you, man, just let us know. And we thank you and appreciate so much for coming on the show. And with that, fellas, if y'all don't got anything else, we're gonna sign off for tonight. So if that's it. We'll talk to y'all later, man. We appreciate y'all coming on.
All right.
Appreciate it.